Hello there, everybody. Charles Hamaker here with you from Circling Cello Sports. It's the first time we've done a Storm Round Table in a while, and it comes at a really interesting time for the franchise in the WNBA as a whole. The expansion draft for the Golden State Valkyries takes place later today. We are here to talk about the internal investigation that finished around the Storm. I believe it was a few days ago officially. Um, and as well what corresponded immediately after that in star shooting guard Jewel Lloyd requesting a trade out of Seattle. So I've got Rowan and Christian with me, two of our folks who work heavily with me with our Seattle Storm coverage. Uh, you guys have both, we've all been around this um, news and these reports for a while. This dates back several months. This isn't just something that came out that we knew about when Annie Possible from the Chicago Sun-Times posted it. It's like we've all known about this, unfortunately, because this is really hard. This is hard to hear about from a franchise that's demanded greatness for a long time and it's achieved that greatness. But now, obviously, when it wasn't able to achieve that, it seemed to cause some problems, I guess is a blanket way to put it. So we're going to start with the investigation. The Storm reportedly brought in an outside source, I believe it was, to conduct this investigation into what was initially reported as several issues or complaints about the coaching staff. The coaching staff is the main topic here. Head coach Noelle Quinn, assistant coach Pokey Chapman, assistant coach Ebony Hoffman. Perry Huang has now moved on to I believe the South Bay Lakers, if I'm correct, or some G League team. He's not with the Storm coaching staff anymore. Um, yeah, I don't. Christian, you've been a big part of this. What do you? What? Let's just go over the investigation here. What led to this happening? And what we know, about this investigation.
So off rip, um, I understand that the investigation is finished, but as far as its true final form, I don't really believe that it is, as far as the truth actually coming out and us actually having some, valuable information of what's actually going on. We've had certain stories come out, like from Annie, the initial report of the investigation, and then Circling Seattle Sports released our own information about what we knew about the situation as far as Mecca Gumake, the WNBA president, and Skylar Diggins-Smith, and the issues that were reported as far as in the locker room and throughout the season, especially the latter part of the season. I guess my confusion with this entire investigation and the lack of information is the fact that it became, like we said before, you said, Charles, an investigation built off multiple instances of players reporting these type of behaviors and basically reporting a toxic workplace environment. And now it's kind of been down reduced to, Jewel Lloyd and issues with the coaching staff, and now she wants out. I think it's really disingenuous that it's, so many different players that I know that these instances have happened. Unfortunately, so you can't really talk about certain things or write about certain things due to sensitivity nature of it. But I know for a fact that this is more than just Joe Lloyd. So the fact that that is now the headline of what's going on in Seattle, I think that's very telling, and it's also very unfortunate.
Yeah, and we look at this, reported accusations of harassment and bullying by the team's coaching staff. This is something that, as we said, is not just one person, which it seems to be being spun into now, right? Where it's just Jewel Lloyd had these issues. I don't think that's the truth of the matter, despite what um and I'm not gonna get messy, but some places are putting out or publishing. Um, that an external investigation, um, a statement was put out that Storm received these internal allegations. That's plural, right? That's a plural. I want to really drive this home because it is important to distinguish whether it's multiple people or one person. Christian and I were talking about it before we started, where I'm sure there would be something if it was one player, but if it's multiple people, like obviously then it's serious. There's more importance to it. I guess you could say, and more um, of a legal tone, right? Because this is all legal now, right? Like this is not something that can just shoot, man, let's just shake hands and we'll call it good. We're far beyond the point of that. Like I said, the organization retained an outside investigator to conduct an impartial investigation of the allegations. There were reportedly no findings. Chose to not comment while the investigation was ongoing. A lot of people were like, why isn't the Storm saying something? They don't want to say something legally if something's taking place currently. Um, yeah, the Sun Times, in its ESPN, I'm just trying to get a baseline of this again, reported the investigation was sparked by the experience of multiple players. Christian has, said multiple players. And by the time that it was initially broken, it said that the investigation had been active for at least 2 weeks by that point. So, um, yeah, no, I just want to get more thoughts on this. I had Christian talk about Rowan. I know you've been around this. You've been around the team as well as longer than I have. Reporting wise, what are your thoughts about this? Because obviously this is investigations like this don't happen very often in sports, let alone I don't remember the last time something like this happened in the W. And I could be forgetting, but what are your
Not too
thoughts on
long
all of
ago. I
this?
mean, you got one going on right now in Las Vegas, unfortunately.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it kind of going, really, like you said, driving home what Christian was saying, I think that now it's just completely been spun to really focusing on Jewel, but it actually was kind of like that even before we knew that nothing was found. And I think that's kind of my issue with it is, if maybe the narrative was shifting to just focusing on Jewel after after the investigation ended, and then after Jewel announced her that she wanted to be traded, that's one thing. But it's like even before that, you see the reports of multiple allegations, and I felt like really none of the conversation was about the coaching staff. It was just about Jewel. It was just about maybe Skylar. I think that was something too, is like I saw a lot of talk online of kind of people on two separate sides, of some people being like, see, this is now Skylar's third, time being in kind of a team chemistry issue during her time in the W. And so kind of really focusing on her. And then the other side was kind of like, we can't say that this is all her. We can't blame her for this. So I guess really what it is it feels like because the players are kind of under more of a microscope, people know them, people watch them, I feel like that's kind of the main focus. And it felt like a lot of the commentary online was taking away from the overall problem of this is serious that someone is alleging this, especially accusing a coaching staff that has been so known to be so opposite of that as well. Like I again saw so many people like, Noelle, Quinn, there's no way, like this couldn't have happened. And just knowing that Skylar and NECA were so emphasized so much how they were coming to this team for the coaching staff, for the team chemistry, for the environment. And just I think that's been a little bit lost, and now it's kind of turned into, is Jewel trying to find a way to get out of Seattle? Is there something else going on? I don't know. It just seems like something that, like Christian was saying, I don't think that it's over. And I also think that if the multiple allegations is true, which I believe it is because everyone's reported that, that has to mean that there are other players who were feeling the same way, and they have not been on the headlining everything of they want to leave, and we won't really know how everyone else feels. We know that Mercedes Russell, her contract is up. She mentioned, she tweeted or commented something on an Instagram post that went viral, so we know that she's still a part of the equation. And there are a lot of players on that team, and we wouldn't know how they were feeling unless they wanted to take to social media with it. And if they haven't, then time will tell when they want to leave. Free agency happens, who knows? So yeah, I think this is far from over, and that I think that the focus has kind of been going back and forth when really we should be focusing on what really happened with the coaching staff, and emphasizing that it seems like something had to have happened for the amount of allegations that there were.
I can't tell you how many times, Rowan, like I've hit the group chat since all this has been going on. I'm like, the story is not even what was initially reported. We're talking about player deals not being met and stats not being met. Yet Jewel took some of the most shots of any shooting guard in the league this season, but we're talking about stats and not getting money. And it's like the story became so much farther away from the actual issue at hand of player mistreatment, multiple reports of player mistreatment, which is why, like, when we initially reported that how the coaching staff was enabling it on the court, right? And I think it was really important to make sure that, hey, this isn't actually the player's fault, right? It's the fact that the coaching staff is allowing it to, it's not being impeded. That's the main issue. And then we're talking about, Scarlett being a troublemaker, which I listen, no. I can't really subscribe to that when she's had two certain issues at both of those teams, and they're the same thing. So me personally, I can't really get with that. And then also trying to throw NECA under the bus, I couldn't really get with that one either. But yeah, as you can hear my dog trying to get to the door. But yeah, it's just so much that the situation is so far from what it needs to be about.
Yeah, and I think and I think it's important that you say that, Christian, because so much of it was, you know, um, initially, that night, that our report came out and Annie's report came out. It was mainly about, hey, this investigation's happening around the coaching staff. This is the coaching staff. Never was it about there's an investigation into players. That was never the case. And then, like, in the days that followed, it got really mucked up by what felt more like opinion pieces as opposed to anything else, like not really backed up by fact or stuff that was disproven by those close to the situation. And that's all I'll mention on that sort of side of things. But yeah, I mean, it was obvious, and this was important as well. And Christian's the Christian put out articles regarding the initial investigation as well as how this sort of came into play, because there were things that happened throughout the course of the season, and specifically exit interviews, right? That and it was pointed out, hey, this seems a little odd, even in the moment, even after the exit interviews, like this feels a little like there's more to the story here. And so when these reports came out, when our reports were published, it was kind of like the pieces clicked here. Whether it was talks about coming to the press conferences after an emotional, I forgot the exact words about that quote, but no, he talked about coming into our post game media availability after leaving an emotional environment. Just different things that Skylar said. What was it Skylar said at the exit interviews about how her leadership style might not have been, you know, as embraced by certain players. Is not That's not verbatim, but it was obvious that this wasn't like, oh, happy go lucky, everyone's together type of team. You know what I mean? That wasn't what was taking place here. Um, and for better, not for better or worse, the coaching staff didn't really help or do the best job at dissecting these situations, or maybe setting these things in the direction they should have been, right? So, like Christian said, to our knowledge, this investigation is um complete. I know maybe there are some things that are out of the balance in that regard, like I don't know what fully we can say, but um, yeah, I don't know. Christian, just what do you have to wrap up on that? Because I
We
don't
can
feel like the dust is settled here, right?
I mean, no one's ever going to be satisfied, especially when
Yeah,
a situation like this comes out. It's such a bombshell issue. And then there hasn't been a real steady flow of information since, really. It's been about a month and change since. And we're probably not going to get that until maybe the new year, honestly. But I will say this: I've spoken to a few friends of mine that are lawyers or have been, presenting in the law field itself. Just because they couldn't find anything doesn't mean it didn't happen. They couldn't prove it, and also things that they were told during separate investigations, as far as like the interviews during the investigation. Um, Players, personnel, team employees might have said things that were issues, right? But didn't amount to like an actual policy violation, as far as violating someone's contract, a team conduct rules, things of that nature. That doesn't mean something didn't happen. It just means it didn't amount up to what they would consider problematic. And I think that's another issue in and of itself, but that's for another day.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's like we said, like we've discussed, all of us have discussed on multiple occasions since the initial reports, were published. Like this investigation has gotten mucked up. There's been different things that have been thrown onto what is initially the main point. And that's troublesome because it can take away from either holding accountability to those who, should be responsible for what's taking place and what has taken place. And some of it's just garbage. Truthfully, it's just garbage, right? Because you know everyone can have their 2 cents now. Anybody can sit here and get a microphone and talk about whatever they'd like. But I mean, this is, I gotta remember, I can't swear on these. This is really serious stuff. You guys can help me out here. My brain gets so mucked up with the
Well,
different sports.
I also was gonna add to that, remembering too that the most recent investigation that we've seen in the WNBA with the Aces, I believe that they did a somewhat of an internal investigation. Then it was a WNBA investigation, and we know that Dearica Hamby is taking it to court.
Yes,
And so
yeah.
it's important, right, to understand that maybe, right, the WNBA might not. I mean, we know that they definitely found something because Becky Hammon was, suspended for, and they had some repercussions, but it has to be, I'm sure the wording of different things has to be very specific, and Dearica clearly still feels as though her justice hasn't been completely served in the way that the WNBA, conducted the investigation. So I guess with that, even time will tell, but still, I think that that's a really great point, that just because something wasn't found doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen, and that players on the team were not, even clearly, if we're thinking about with Jewel, even if they didn't find anything, we still know that something is upsetting enough for Jewel to be leaving, and that's important to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I mean, this might be a rip, but do we think it goes? This investigation goes to that level? Do we think it gets pushed to that, or is it just, you know, Jules says, "I want out of here," and that, because again, it's not just her issue, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do we think in that regard? Do we think this goes further, or is it just this investigation will end that, and but it'll cause, domino effect in other regards?
I don't. I'm still kind of, well. First of all, there is such limited information out there. Um, and before we go any further, I feel like it's important to note that some things can be reported because they can be corroborated. So other things can't be because of, again, sensitive nature, or it can be corroborated. People have jobs that they depend on. Things can easily come back to them. Like, these things matter as far as getting information out. And I know it seems like, people tweet or post things making it seem like they know more than they do. And I can promise you, in most times, these situations, they don't. It's not that cut dry. It's really not. And I think it's unfortunate, the fact that we're at this point where it's kind of mucked up, like Charles was saying. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna keep running.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I mean, especially like you said, with specifically how this is going on, like it's not just a player, I didn't hit my benchmarks this year because you didn't, this it's not, it's a lot farther than that. So yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's the case in other situations too. You can only say so much. And if it gets tied back to you, then you're without a job. So yeah.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, were you going to watch the Seattle Storm away games this year?
Away games. Well, Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports. So I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. See you all here.